Hi everyone, and welcome to a new series. We're going to go back in history and have a look at the best chess opening novelties, starting in 1971 when this award was given by Informator by a team of Grandmaster experts. And we're going to see how chess has progressed from 1971 and also see what were the most powerful moves going through the years. So into our first example, and our first example, we're actually going to have a look at a game from the Alekhine, or Alekhine if you want to try to speak with a Russian accent, and I'm probably totally wrong there. Yes, I'm going to get a lot of comments about that. Hey ho. And this was a game between Velimirovich and Giplis, two very well-known players. And let's just bring up a picture of those players. And here we have Giplis and we have Velimirovich here. You might recognize those players. Oh, hang on a minute. My name. You know who that is? Yeah, finish it off. My name is Michael Caine. No, it's quite funny because actually, if we look at Giplis, he looked so like Michael Caine, in my opinion. Let's just get the two pictures up. There's Giplis. There is Michael Caine. They could be brothers, right? But anyway, they're the two players, and it started off, and we'll dive straight into the chess with the Alekhine. The Alekhine is knight to f6, and this is one of the most interesting openings black can play because black is immediately attacking the center of the board, creating some kind of action volcano in the middle there. The most critical move, and the move that white played, is to push on, attacking that knight. And in these positions, white uses his pawns to build a big center, but black is arguing that white's center is overextended. So now white played the main move, kicking that knight away, and played d4, a very critical response. And after d6, another critical response, the four pawns attack f4, building up this tremendous center. And the funny thing is now, if we zoom forwards another 50 years, this position, this way of playing f4 has only just become critical again for black. This idea of playing this is meant to be one of the reasons black doesn't play the Alekhine. So even 50 years ago, for different reasons, this was a critical response. And it is a very interesting position. You can see black's aiming for counterplay, but white has this tremendous center. Now black has to try and do something in the middle, so he exchanges here, and now the knight comes out, pressurizing that center. Typical play in the Alekhine, using pieces to hit the center, and this is still very main line. And now bishop e3. You want to be careful how you develop your pieces. If you went knight to f3 here, which looks normal, you allow black's bishop to pin that knight, which again gives black that more control over the central square. So this bishop e3 is a much cleverer way to play. It avoids stepping into the pin with bishop g4. And now black develops bishop f5, white brings his knight out, e6. You can see black's got his bishop on the other side of that pawn. This is still a key position. White now brings his knight out because pinning it would lose the tempo. Black bishop e7, and now d5, and we get to a very critical position here, and one that is still important theoretically nowadays. Now if you want to learn more about this, GingerGM have a DVD on the Alekhines, or you can use our gchess.com to really get into the opening and see what you think. And it's strange here because after knight b4, at the time, going back 50 years, black was considered to be doing really quite decently here after the move f6, trying to break open white's center when he's saying to white, you're overextended. But the novelty, or I would say one of the novelties of the year, we'll come to our second one, we're picking two for each year, was after a3, you force that knight away. An amazing move now. And the amazing move, and remember these ideas were found without computers, was g4. Now these moves in the modern light of day might not even be the best moves. They were given novelty of the year, but they had such shock value to the opponents, that the opponents are really thrown off guard. And what is this crazy Gary pawn push? Well, the pawn is attacking the bishop and it's gaining space. What white has to give this pawn up. Black has to take it because otherwise e6 would be dropped. But the whole point is quite a modern idea of giving up a g pawn, and we see this in a lot of lines, to try and get the rook down to come in this case, to the g7 square. But it is a whole pawn sacrifice, as we're going to see, because we're not necessarily going to take on g7. But it's a very interesting idea. Do remember that g pawn push. Now we'll go through the next moves quite quickly. White, from his pawn sack line, has got this lovely open file and control of the center. It's much easier to attack in chess when you control the center of the board. And we see black now castled into this, and white played a very clever move, even putting the rook behind the pawn, or ideas of increasing the pressure against the king. And really, white's space advantage in the middle, combined with the pressure on the g file, led to black's eventual downfall. And we'll whiz through the moves now because it's a very nice finish. White breaks in the center of the board, and now he increases the pressure, getting ready. So he's combining center attack, side attack, and we see here pushing on here. And this was a tactical idea, winning the exchange, and here, boom, g7. This is the focal point of the attack. Very hard for black to defend that. He tries g5. The bishop swings out. The last piece develops. White doesn't even bother castling here. And now b4, forcing that knight to go back. And after pawn takes here, we're just trying to take on g5 with the rook. The end is getting near. The knight is attacked, so the knight has ideas now swinging over this way. And it does dive in. Big threat on e6, so black decides to take on d6. And you can pause now. It's white to play and win. Rook takes g5. The king went into the corner. But if the bishop took this one, it would have been queen takes, and eventually this queen comes down. But after king to h8, there was an equally nice finish played by this very famous attacker, Velimovic, and he now played, hope you saw it, boom, hello, queen takes h7, check. Black resigned because the rook would swing to h5, checkmate. So in 1971, this idea of g4 was the first game voted as novelty of the year. But we're now going to move over to our second game and two extremely famous players. We had Fischer and his opponent, the very famous Petrosian. And it was around this time where Fischer was only a year or so away from becoming world champion. But he was also very paranoid about the power of Russia and the Soviet Union, should I say, and how they teamed up, and they would basically take it in turns to try and weaken Bobby, he was only on his own, representing the Bronx, New York, and America. And the Russian players, they would, in long tournaments, they would draw against each other very quickly to save their energy, a bit like some modern day chess. And then they would dive in and try to play as long and as hard as they could against Bobby. So Bobby had a very hard time against him, but he came through them all and just shows his fighting spirit. And this next game is a brilliant example of that. And actually the novelty at the time is from Petrosian with the black pieces, but it just shows Bobby's resolve. If you get hit by a new move, do not panic. Think, just keep your calm and just get through it, you know. And this is what Bobby did. Now Bobby with the white pieces starts with the Sicilian. He always played the Sicilian. We go into a sort of canned Sicilian, and this is all kind of well-known stuff. White grabs the center. Black now is faced with this hole on d6. You don't want to allow a knight there, so he blocks it. And after bishop f4, this transposes a little bit to a Kalashnikov kind of structure, because black has to play e5, and Bobby was very at home in these structures, trying to take over that d5 square, eventually with a knight. But Petrosian was still in his theory. Bishop g5, again, the idea is that d5 is weak, so you want to get rid of pieces that are controlling that nice outpost. Black tries to cover the outpost, and white brings his knight out to come into the outpost. a6, well, the knight has to go away eventually, but first of all, let's get rid of the piece controlling that one. Sometimes giving your bishop up for a knight is a good idea, because if the knight's more important, does a better role, don't get stuck in ways of, oh, the bishop's always better than the knight. You play moves for purpose, for reasons. If the knight controls squares, you get rid of the knight. And this is also quite handy because of knight c7, meaning the queen can't capture. Black has to double his pawns. And after knight a3, we now see a move that Petrosian, probably with his team, and his team of, again, something Bobby didn't have, many other grandmasters prepared, especially for Bobby, to try to take down this upstart from America. And the move he now played was the quite astonishing looking d5. What a move! You're walking into a fork. You give up a pawn and you walk into a fork, and here White's defending that pawn, you're attacking it, but you can't really win that one. So what is this idea? It's quite phenomenal, and Bobby must have been so really shocked to have seen this move played. Well, the idea is after Bobby takes with the pawn, Black takes on a3, very natural move. Bobby recaptures, and now the point behind this strategy, the queen comes out, attacking the knight and vacating the d8 square, so a black rook can quickly come to that square, you know, just putting more pressure on the pawn on d5. And even though this looks like a winning pin, White never has the opportunity to win a piece here. And just imagine facing this in a game. I mean, against an incredibly strong player, Petrosian, one of the strongest players, of course, in the world. Your opponent plays this novelty, I'd be freaking out. I'd probably crumble. Bobby Fischer, what a legend. He just sat there, he worked his way through it. He played queen d2. Black's idea, castles. He's in a pin, but he's got all the pressure. The white king stuck in the middle of the board. Bobby tried to defend this pawn. A good move from Petrosian, using his last piece. Rook d1. Bobby really just keeping an eye on this one. And now the move bishop f5. And after this move, Black is totally okay, maybe even slightly better, but Bobby goes on to outplay him little by little and eventually win the game. Petrosian, here, he's played such a brave chess, and he should have continued in that way by just capturing the pawn there on g2, leading to complications. But you should always try to play the most testing move for your opponent in any position. But still, an amazing idea that Bobby did incredibly well to get through. Now, if we go back to this second novelty of the year, d5, again, one thing we have nowadays is computers. On GChess, we spent a lot of money using the strongest computers and the strongest analysis you can find anywhere. This is www.gchess.com. And we've used, we basically, with our encyclopedia, which we're building up all the time, and there's something, if you get the paid subscription, get access to, we have a neural network with the strongest computer that works like AlphaZero, and we've used it on 5 minutes on every single position in our encyclopedia. And funnily enough, it does give d5 as better for Black, but its improvement here is knight d4, and it thinks that this move is even stronger, with the idea of playing f5 and just getting a lot of pressure on this pawn and just putting a knight on a beautiful square. And it just shows you how computers nowadays can find opening novelties incredibly quickly. But at the time, d5, found by a human, not by a computer, walking into a fork is a simply astonishing idea. But we'll have a look at the evolution of opening novelties and how they develop from 50 years ago, 1971, to modern day. So we've got a fair few to get through, loads of brilliant opening novelties. We'll talk about the openings a lot, but do remember, guys, please subscribe to this channel. Please do have a look in the link in the descriptions at other videos that are relevant, and you know, all likes do really mean a lot. And I'll be back again soon, continuing this series.